One of the most frustrating things for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses to deal with is seeing current believing Jehovah's Witnesses pretend as if they never had a certain rule or policy in place before, once that has been updated or changed. And it can be a truly frustrating experience. And instead of throwing kerosene on the fire that is EXJW discontentment, I'm going to try and do something a little bit different and provide some context, a Wally hypothesis to hopefully help understand why they do this, and it'll be a little bit like therapy. You'll still have every reason to be angry, but you'll at least understand why, and you can always draw a little bit of comfort from understanding why. So let's do this. Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally, and today we're looking at a section from the November JW broadcasting. Quickly before we do that, I need to provide a little context to this and give you a good old classic Wally hypothesis to help shed some light about the mechanistic things going on, the psychology behind what's happening, and hopefully that can illuminate the situation a little bit. So first off, I think it is important to understand how there is a significantly different culture inside the organization versus outside when it comes to rules, doing something bad, doing something, sinning, as it were. I guess it doesn't have to be a sin, it could be a legalistic thing, but we'll just, for the religious purpose context, we're going to call it sinning. So when someone sins, something that is written in elders' books as a question to be asked when you're evaluating the severity of punishment or exactly what's the proper course going forward is going to be, is how well known is the event? And that's very important because you can have the exact same sin done two different ways and get completely different punishment outcomes. So for instance, you can have a situation where an elder gets drunk, and he actually gets drunk quite regularly with his other elder friends. Maybe they do it once a month, maybe they do it every week. And it's, not really talked about. They're all elders, they're all in good standing. You wouldn't have an elder who was doing something bad because Jehovah would handle that situation. And this could go on for years and years and years. And as long as no one tells on each other, everything's all hunky-dory. They're not going to have to face any consequences for the sin of getting drunk, because it's not about what you do, it's about who knows about it. So you can have someone else. Let's say it's a group of 20-somethings, some married people, some single people. I'm just gotta spitball one off the top of the dome here. Well, I'll use a real example. They all rent a cabin and they all go snowboarding together. And oh boy, someone gets drunk and everything goes in the toilet. So when you get back and there's someone got drunk, they have to go and confess it to the elders. Now, what happens when they go and confess that to the elders? Well, they say, "Oh, thank you so much for telling us about this. Do you mind meeting with us after the meeting?" So then they walk publicly into this back room where they're sitting down with two elders talking about the situation. Now, everyone that's heard that, this group of people went to go snowboarding and rented a cabin, they all know that this person is now sitting there talking to the elders. So this inherently is already more well known because it doesn't take a genius to put two and two together. So they all went to a cabin on the weekend. Now they're meeting with the elders. I wonder what happened there. Oh, I bet someone got drunk. Oh, let me go and try and fish for some information from someone else that was there. And bada bing, bada boom. Now the entire congregation knows about the sin of getting drunk. So that person ends up getting disfellowshipped for that. They lose their family, they lose their friends, cut off all communication, and have to wait a year. It's not like that anymore, but I'm talking about, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And they have to grovel back to the organization, right? So you have two completely different outcomes for the exact same sin. And what was the only difference? perception. So this is something that is known by every Jehovah's Witness. Everyone knows that this is a cultural thing. Whether or not they want to admit that, completely immaterial. This is the culture of congregations around the world. That the only thing that matters is perception. And so what does that mean for individual witnesses? They get really good at lying. They get very good at making sure their stories are all buttoned up and just lying through their teeth right out of their faces because they have to have some self-preservation instincts going on. All right, another thing that happens, sorry, this is a long rant, but it is important, I think so. Another thing that happens is when you are reading or studying or doing anything for that matter, you are going to come across things that simply don't make sense with the real world evidence that you can look up and research yourself versus what you're told as a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm fairly confident in saying that every single person that grows up as a witness at some point will encounter one of these. For a lot of people, it might be evolution. For others, I'll just use myself as an example. I like to read, and I was constantly seeing in these history books the date of Jerusalem's destruction being 586 BCE. Now, did I go and investigate that further? Well, I might do a little quick Google search and find that there is archaeological evidence, historic evidence, astronomical evidence, all supporting this pretty, like, everyone agrees, all scholars agree, that 586, 587 would be a good year to use for the destruction of Jerusalem. And yet, in the Jehovah's Witness literature, it's only said 607, 607, 607, because it's foundational to their belief system. So now little Wally here has a choice he has to make. Is he going to accept something that he can now prove, or is he going to lie to himself? Is he going to delude himself? Well, again, self-preservation comes into key here, because I don't want to lose my friends. I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to deal with the consequences of my beliefs not being true. So I pretend that this thing doesn't exist. I just pretend that I never even came across it. And I did this with multiple things down through the years as I got older and older. Eventually those things compound, but anyway, we don't have to worry about any of that at this minute. So this is all leading to this hypothesis that I have that Jehovah's Witnesses not only are good liars on the outside to other people because self-preservation means that they have to be good liars, they're also good liars inwardly because self-preservation dictates that you have to get good at deluding yourself. So how does this play out in the real world? I'll give you an example that I thought kind of makes sense with this, and that is a couple of years ago. I studied with Jehovah's Witnesses for about a year. They would come to my house, we'd have these long discussions, blah, blah, blah. And eventually I went to a memorial with them. Oh, Wally goes to his first memorial with my Bible teachers. And there were a few questions that I had asked that I thought would be pretty funny. And this was before they made the change with respect to beards. So when I showed up there, I'm the only man in a room full of about 100 dudes that has a beard. And I ask, why does no one have a beard? Seems pretty strange on a Tuesday evening here in Kirkland, Washington, that I'm with a group of 100 other guys and not a single one has a beard. What's going on here? And they say, I never really thought about that. So I press a little bit further. I'm like, you've never thought about the statistical anomaly that is that this singular group of people is the only one that exists on planet Earth that is no one here is wearing has facial hair. I've never been in a group of this many men and not a single one has facial hair. Like, there has to be something to this. And they said, well, there's some stuff, some suggestions about our appearance and keeping neat and clean, but most people choose to not have a beard. I don't know why I keep saying wear. And they believed it when he was looking me in the eyes and telling me, oh no, it's a choice we make, he believed it. And it, again, I think is a good little litmus test here for my hypothesis. Witnesses in a world where they have to have self-preservation are very adept at lying. He even believed the lie, because if you don't believe the lie, what's going to happen? Oh yeah, we have a rule. Men cannot have facial hair. They can have a mustache, but they can't have a beard. The first thing that I would have said is, didn't Jesus have a beard? And then his whole world comes crumbling down. So instead of my whole world crumbling down, the obvious answer is, I'm just going to lie about it. And as far as I can tell, when I look through our species, when I look at planet Earth, life on planet Earth, the single greatest motivating factor propelling this little blue ball around the universe is self-preservation. You don't want to die. And that is powerful. So I'm saying all of that is just like a precursor to what we're about to watch, because it can be very infuriating to see this. And yes, we can be infuriated, but hopefully with some of these things in mind, it's starting to sound like a Jehovah's Witness, but with thinking about some of this, you'll be able to have some understanding. And when you have an understanding, at least you know why you feel so upset. So let's take a look at this little skit that Jehovah's Witnesses did in the broadcast, where it's a couple doing some biblical research into the book of Obadiah.
The book of Obadiah is so short, it's easy to overlook, but there's so much in here.
I'm glad we're slowing down to pull some treasures out for family worship.
Yeah, me too. Something I've shared with people looking to dig deeper are the study tips on the back of the Watchtower.
So, what can we say about Obadiah's circumstances?
Well, Obadiah verse 11 speaks about the time period when strangers took Judah's army into captivity, and when foreigners entered the gates casting lots over Jerusalem. That was 607 BCE. Here, take a look at this timeline. Jehovah had sent so many messengers to Israel begging them to stop their wrongdoing, repent, and worship him acceptably.
But look at that. For centuries, they ignored him and made no real effort to change.
So in 607 BCE, Jehovah uses the Babylonians to severely discipline the remainder of his people in Judah.
So this is how Jehovah's Witness biblical research and study goes. I did cringe air quotes, but I didn't have to see it because I can't see myself, so only you have to suffer. So I guess I feel fine about the whole situation. But imagine I propose like just a hypothetical situation, like you run into someone and they're saying that, man, Donald Trump is the only way that we're going to save America. You're like, oh, that's nice. And you're like, yo, what's your political affiliation? I don't really care. Oh, you need to be a Republican and you need to watch Fox News or else we're going to let this country die. And you're like, oh, I think I'm good. I'll be honest with you. Just out of curiosity, have you ever listened to the other side of the political spectrum? No. Have you literally never heard a Democratic speaker give a presentation of their political points? No. Have you ever watched any other thing other than CNN, NPR, CNN, anything? No, why would I need to do that? Fox News has the truth, and that's exactly what's happening, and we all know that it's true because it's true, and they say it's true. You would think that this person was unstable. Like, no one in the real world that I've ever encountered has been that hardcore about a particular subject and completely unwilling to look at what a opposing opinion might be, except Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the only time I've really encountered someone that will only look at Watchtower sources and consider those to be true. Like, that's it. And when you ask them, have you ever spoken to an apostate? The answer for most people is no. Have you ever read anything from an apostate? No. Have you ever read anything that's not like a Watchtower publication other than what was required in school? Sadly, a lot of people, the answer will be no. So the idea that they're doing, and I'm not picking on any political party, I could care less. I think our current government, I mean, I'm not saying current as in the Republican Donald Trump government, I'm saying the current sphere on either side seems to me very clearly to be run by the few for the few instead of by the people for the people. So I really could care less about it. It all seems like a bunch of billionaires who want to stay very wealthy and keep people poor. But that's for a different day. We don't even need to go. But I just, so we're clear, I'm not particular. I'm just using this as an example. If you want to flip flop it, because that's more palatable to your predilections, A-okay with me. We can use whatever term, CNN, blah, 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 right? So the point of this is their research is phony. It's fake. And most Jehovah's Witnesses would recognize this if it was put to them in a different situation. They would say, yeah, that person that only watches Fox News and thinks that this is the only way is probably inherently wrong. It's more probable that they're wrong because they're only considering one source. And yet they won't ever flip that around and use that as a mirror to say, wait, isn't that exactly what I do? Now, the point of this isn't going to be looking at the 607 and all that stuff. I still never made a video about 607. I'll do it one of these days. But the point that we're going to be focusing in on is how Jehovah deals with disobedient people and how he exercises his justice.
They really left him no choice.
It was completely justified. But then Edom shows up. Even though they were family to the Israelites, verse 14 mentions that the Edomites stood at the crossroads and captured the fleeing Israelites to turn them back over to the Babylonians. Jehovah hadn't authorized them to be part of his discipline.
Can you imagine being an Israelite back then? You somehow escaped the Babylonians, only to be captured by your extended family, the Edomites, your own relatives.
I can't imagine. It's just so cruel. I wonder if the Israelites began to think this mistreatment was actually part of Jehovah's discipline.
Mistreatment can warp our thinking. What about Obadiah himself? Was anyone he was close to captured or killed because of the Edomites? Did he begin to wonder if Jehovah was behind it?
It must have been such a relief for Obadiah to receive this prophecy from Jehovah, reassuring him that Jehovah is never the source of injustice.
But let's go deeper and ask another question. When? The when of Obadiah is one of the reasons this prophecy is so beautiful. So in 607 BCE, the Israelites were unrepentant and Jehovah justly disciplines them. But Edom treats Israel cruelly. When does Jehovah act and inspire Obadiah to condemn them? Not long after the destruction, about 607 BCE, even though Israel was receiving discipline.
Jehovah hadn't turned his back on the Israelites.
No. Jehovah sent Obadiah to reassure them that he had not abandoned them and that he was not the cause of Edom's actions. To Jehovah, the Israelites deserve discipline, but not injustice. They deserve correction, but not cruelty.
I know probably half of you had already clicked off of the video, but for the half that's still remaining, thank you for sticking around. This is about where it gets spicy, but I felt it important to really let this play out so that way you could see how this is being presented to Jehovah's Witnesses. God has standards of how he carries out justice. He requires correction, but not cruelty. He never would do anything that's unjust. So just remember that the Jehovah's Witnesses are saying that from God's viewpoint, he wouldn't allow cruelty. Okay? And now we're about to be shown an example of what might be considered cruelty instead of correction.
So what do you think this reveals about Jehovah's justice and the way he exercises his sovereignty?
For one thing, it shows that Jehovah is never cruel or unfeeling, and he's never the source of injustice. In fact, he hates it. He condemned the Edomites for how they treated Israel. But doesn't it also reveal something about how Jehovah treats those he disciplines?
Yes. Jehovah never mistreats or turns his back on wrongdoers, even unrepentant ones. He is still acutely interested in them.
Wow, that's beautiful. Okay, so how can we make this personal for us? What's going through your mind?
It really makes me ask myself, do I share Jehovah's view of wrongdoers? As an elder, do I do everything I can to try to move sinners to repentance? That takes emotional effort. And what if they don't respond and have to be removed? How do I feel about them? How do I speak to them? How do I treat them?
Yeah, like when they attend a meeting.
Exactly. Jehovah deeply cares about how we treat people.
This is why I started the video with a 12-minute rant to help put this into context. But first, let's at least acknowledge just how outrageous the thing we just heard is. Going back to the 1950s, before that, the Jehovah's Witnesses openly said in their Watchtower publications that excommunication and shunning were a tool and a weapon used by other churches, namely the Catholic Church, to control and manipulate people. They were spoken of as evil. I made a whole video, I think it's the most viewed video I've ever made, that breaks down the whole entire history of shunning and what they said about it. So if you want to actually see those in the quotes, you can go and check that video out, but I'm guessing a lot of people have already seen those already. So that was their pattern. They looked at this thing like, oh, shunning, that's evil. And then they got some new light that says, this will be pretty handy. Let's bring shunning into the fold in the 1950s. And since then, this has been the standard operating procedure for Jehovah's Witnesses. If someone makes a mistake, whether it's getting drunk, having sex with the wrong person, being gay, whatever, saluting the flag, whatever the case is, there are many rules. If one of them is broken, people were to treat them as if they didn't exist. You could not say hello. It was specified in Watchtowers that even saying hello to someone would be an act of disloyalty to God. Okay? So, they're presenting now what it looks like to treat someone how God would want them to be treated by going up to a disfellowshipped or removed person and saying hello, treating them kindly, how they speak to them, whereas before they never spoke to them. And because Watchtower is the one that is predicating these things on how God feels about it, we have an obvious discrepancy. Before, for the last, 70 years, God wanted me to be cruel. According to this, not talking to someone and ignoring them would be cruel, right? According to Watchtower, out of their own mouth, that would be being cruel. So God wanted people to be cruel to their fellow witnesses until August 2024, or whenever they made that change to where you could say hello to people that were removed now. And the punishments were a lot lighter, and they don't really apply to minors. If you just look at that thing by itself, it can induce some insane rage. And that's why before I even started this video, I watched that, and then I just went and I started walking up and down the stairs and pacing back and forth down the hall for like 30 minutes to try and get my thoughts together, so that way I could try and express this coherently. Because it's easy to get mad and angry at this. Which, again, you probably should, because they're well deserving of that. But just remember what I was saying there at the beginning. This actually makes so much sense in the context of witness culture. They have a culture of being liars. They have to be liars because it's the best way at self-preservation. And when I mean self-preservation, I'm not being hyperbolic. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, what is tied is to being a witness is it's your religion, your belief system, so your spirituality. It is your friends and your family, so it's your social network. A lot of times, it's your job, your employment as well. It's your personal identity. You are a Jehovah's Witness. You live that life. You breathe that air. So it's how you even evaluate yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror. It's your future. Instead of, investing in a 401k, you're investing in Watchtower buildings and helping them with their real estate portfolio. You are thinking you are investing in your future. So if you have all of these things tied to your identity as a witness, it really makes a lot of sense that you don't want to deal with thinking about, wait, does that mean that the organization wasn't being led by God for all those years while we were cruel to people? Does that mean that the governing body told me to do something that God didn't approve of? Because that's the consequence of just accepting this new light for what it is. If you think about it, you must come to the conclusion that what the governing body was telling you before wasn't what God wanted you to do. And if that's not what God wanted you to do, you were following a man and not God. And all of those things that I listed, they all come crumbling down. And so in order to not have all of those things crumbling down, if you're doing the little mental equation here, you're like, do I want to lose my family, my friends, my identity, my religion, my future? No, I don't think I want to do that on a Wednesday evening. I think I would rather just do what I'm really good at. Lying to other people and lying to myself. And that is kind of like the anatomy of cult thinking, if you will. But how fascinating it is to see how quickly the organization put this together, because it's significant. It's pretty serious. And I'm pretty confident in saying that many Jehovah's Witnesses will really think about this too hard. But by God, if they do, that world will come crumbling down very quickly. So I think most will probably just end up lying to themselves. But if you are someone that likes asking, you still have contact with some of your Jehovah's Witness relatives, this might be an interesting talking point. Sending this to them and just asking that question. Does that mean that all the years that we were to not say hello, pretend like they didn't exist, we were told that was an act of love, and now we're being told it would be an act of cruelty to do those things? But if God never changes, that necessitates the conclusion that we were following men, not God, right? And if they want to say God works in mysterious ways, then pat him on the back, slap him on the butt, and go drink some tea, have a bubble bath. You'll feel a lot better about yourself. Anyway, let's move on.
That's especially true in the family. Jehovah condemned the Edomites because of how they treated their family, the Israelites. So that makes me think, how do I treat my family? How do I treat you, in public or in private?
That's a great point. Or am I inclined to be cruel or unkind in what I say or do, even if I feel justified for some reason? What effect could my treatment have on my family's thinking or their relationship with Jehovah? What does Jehovah see? What message would Jehovah have for me if Obadiah came to visit?
So this is the part where I literally can't make any sense of it. So if you have a special insight into what's going on here, comment down below. I for the life of me, I can't get my head around it. Why are they telling people to think about this obvious problem? The leadership of the Watchtower is telling Jehovah's Witnesses to think about their treatment of others and make sure it's not cruel, when like hundreds of thousands of them will have the lived experience of being disfellowshipped or having a family member disfellowshipped. Like most witnesses, I say hundreds of thousands, it's probably safe to say millions of witnesses are familiar with the disfellowshipping, shunning, how that works. And now they're trying to incorporate the idea and wanting Jehovah's Witnesses to think about the fact that that would be cruel. That's not what Jehovah would want. And let's move on to the next section. I'm fairly certain that there is copyright music, so I'll just put it in a little box in the corner. But basically this guy is telling his life story, and he always had this sense that something was missing in his life, and he has a propensity to stare off into the distance a lot. Anyway, he was very talented in music, and so he kind of went through various stages of that and worked his way all the way up to be part of the Australian Opera. And he traveled all around the world, Switzerland, Hong Kong. and he had all the accolades and everything, but always felt that he was still missing something. And we know how this story goes. A bit about this, though. He did go and see a psychiatrist that diagnosed him with clinical depression and obsessive compulsive disorder. So after his stint with, or not after his stint, but he decided to quit his stint with Australian Opera and became a recluse for 10 years. And during that time, he had received some Watchtower magazines and would occasionally look through them, and we know the rest of the story. That's how he found purpose. This is just another classic example of how Watchtower wants to make people believe that they can't be happy unless they have Watchtower in their lives. Unless they are Jehovah's Witness, there's no happiness out there. So something that they'll do in these JW broadcasts is find someone that, from a worldly perspective, from a normal perspective, had a lot going for him, but decided to let all of that go, turn his back on worldly prestige, and become a Jehovah's Witness and clean chairs and windows and help build stuff for real estate company that moonlights as a religion. So too bad for this guy. Wish him the best with his mental health journey. I guess if something works for you, then he found his drug of choice. Whatever. Now let's look at a quick little snippet from the morning worship talk that they chose, because I found it interesting how they decided to subtly slip something in about education.
Now, of course, it says they were uneducated and ordinary, at least from their point of view. The study note points out that doesn't mean that they didn't know how to read and write, but they just had not been to the rabbinic schools. But notice what the second part of that verse says, that they were astonished and that they began to realize they had been with Jesus. So the religious leaders could see that his disciples had learned and been good students, and that they were copying Jesus' methods and way of teaching. So while they hadn't been to rabbinic schools, they had been to a much better school, the one Jesus was teaching them, and they learned from him.
I see what you did there, pal. Yeah, still trying to stick with this. Yeah, you know, they might not have been to the rabbinic schools, but they followed Jesus, and that was the best education they could have had. Yeah, that's some old school Watchtower thinking. You need to get rid of those word tracks that you're using there, bub, because don't you know the new light? Going to university is okay. So I think they pulled this one out of the archives, and so some of his lingo seems a little bit outdated. And they end the broadcast. I don't know why I just stuttered there, buffered in real time. The broadcast ends with Jeffrey Jackson doing a little postcard, so let's hear what he has to say about that.
Our postcard this month comes from a country that's renowned for its waffles, fries, and almost 1,500 different kinds of beer. And where, according to one study, the average inhabitant indulges in 8 kilograms of chocolate per year. Have you guessed where this might be?
Yeah, I have a guess. It's your intestines. It's full of beer, chocolate, and nonsense. Anyway, that's about all I have to say for this month's broadcasting. A 2-part episode. I don't like doing them in one because those videos are like an hour long. It just seems a little bit tedious, so break them up a little bit for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Sorry it was a little bit ranty, but I did think some of those points were important. Don't forget to drop a like on the video if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit that goal of 45,000 subscribers. Very much appreciate it. With all that being said, stay safe, be kind, and don't ever forget that the real fountain of youth is curiosity. So go out there and learn something, and you'll have a good-ass day.